So our question remains, what is religion? What is this study that we are going to take a journey on? Across the world, every day, people wonder just what religion is. From Facebook memes, online forums, community event planners, boards of directors of companies, policymaker friends, and around the workplace, people of all walks of life wonder of this thing called religion. Questions arise of religion versus spirituality, the corporateness of major world religions, the cult-like questions of emerging religions, the proper etiquette when with someone of a religious persuasion different than our own, the control and power religions may have, and whether there may or may not be some type of transcendent or earthly power greater than humankind. To arrive at what religion is, though, is a complex process, as each person, community, author, and scholar can have their own nuances in seeking to define, classify, and approach religion. The way that you understand religion, define religion, think about religion, or insert philosophy, spirituality, way of life, or tradition into that sentence. The way you define that is different than the way your best friend who's grown up in the same tradition does. So one of the tasks that I would ask of you is to seek out 4 people and ask them how they would define religion and spirituality. And if you're using the workbook, go ahead and summarize their responses. See what others have to say. See where they might agree or disagree with your own definitions. While seeking to understand the variations of responses to questions of ultimate concern, and what might be called the belief aspect of religion, is as old as philosophy. The academic study of religion, or comparative religion, is a newer field, mostly centered starting in the 18th century. The reason for this is that religion was not easily seen as something separate from what one might call culture, tradition, one's way of life. Within religious communities, there's art, culture, traditions, beliefs, rituals. The idea of separating out religion from these aspects to be studied as a distinct field was unique. And not just unique, it is difficult. To this day, the separation of art, music, culture from what could be considered religious or spiritual or sacred is a complex process. The Enlightenment thinkers, though, they thought it was possible, believing that even as they encountered communities with unique beliefs and practices, they could discern this religious aspect. However, as the 21st century came with more travel, sharing of knowledge, and experiences, the realization exists that most regions around the world do not have this separate category called religion. Rather, it is their way of life, their traditions, their knowledge passed down through sacred stories and rituals. It is the writings of their religious leaders, cultural leaders, heroes, their medicine men, their shaman. This can make the approach to defining and understanding religion challenging. In theological studies, one looks to find the truth and understanding of a deity and tradition based on a supernatural realm. However, religious studies looks to be able to assess, study, complete academic inquiry, and obtain data on the experiences, about the beliefs, the actions which a person takes in their pursuit of questions of ultimate concern. The study of comparative religion is not solely on the understanding or seeking of theo, God, in Greek, but it does incorporate all the aspects that religion and spirituality can touch on all things that can be considered sacred, be it to an individual or to a group. Before we go further in looking at definitions, let's look a bit more into the what and how of religion. When we look at our surroundings, we can observe what people are saying, what they are doing, how they are acting, what the environment is, what objects or items are in the vicinity, and other aspects of human interaction. Do we know? Can we determine whether these observations are of a religious or spiritual nature? Often the answer is yes, though at times we may realize knowing which religion or spiritual discipline is being practiced, or if the practice may relate less to religious, spiritual, sacred beliefs of the person and be for some other reason. When we see someone walking down the road and they have a head covering on, you might see that head covering. Let's say it appears that this person wearing this head covering appears to be female. We might think, well, that head covering could be for religious reasons. Okay. Well, what religion might this person be? One of the first responses when I ask this in a live class is Muslim. That's true. She could be a follower of Islam. Thing is, she could also be an Orthodox Jew or even other forms of Judaism. She could be part of Christianity. There's forms within Hinduism, even Buddhism, and tribal religions around the world, different tribal religions, and even newer religious movements where women might cover their head or hair. So sometimes we may not easily realize that what we think the person is practicing isn't what they're practicing. We may not easily realize that we might be passing judgments pretty early on or making assumptions. So I want you to think on your own, and if you're working through the workbook, to answer the task. Part 1. How might you know you are encountering religious or spiritual activity? Can you tell which religion or spiritual disciplines are being practiced by this activity? If you are part of any of our online groups, then in those groups a similar question has been asked, or you can just use those groups to look at part 1. In part 2, where? In what places do you encounter religious or spiritual activity? Is there a particular reason that you encounter religion or spirituality in these places? So an example of this might be, well, we encounter religious activities when we go to a church. Why? Because that is the building where members of Christianity may be gathering in order to worship. But I want you to think outside of the church, the temple, the mosque, and think about other places. In part 3, what aspects of life might be impacted by religion or spiritual beliefs? Can you think of how? why life would be impacted. Such as, an example, when you're getting married, there might be beliefs, practices of your religion, of the person you're marrying, their religion, their philosophy, their spirituality. And those beliefs, those practices, those traditions may end up having an impact on what the wedding ceremony looks like, on the entire process of getting married, even determining who you might marry. Why does religion, spirituality have an impact in this way? Well, it comes down to how those religions, spiritualities, philosophies, cultural traditions might view marriage, the purpose of it, the meaning behind it. And because for some traditions, that marriage isn't considered just a contract, but is considered some form of divine or sacred union, blessed by some ultimate power. So I'd like you to take your time and work through these and then move on to the next video.